everyone, it is Zakhele here and welcome to our weekly videos. This week I want to talk about the size of government. I think this is something that's pretty important for us here in South Africa, right? We are just experiencing budget problems. We are a household that seemingly cannot sustain itself collectively. So I thought it would be important for us to talk about what I believe is the foundational cause of why we seemingly have these costs that we can never seemingly meet concerning our national and state expenditure in general, and that is due to the size of our government. So when we speak of the size of the government, we are pretty much speaking about, well, as the name implies, how big it is, right? And what it actually does, how frequent it does it, the activities of the government, their scope, their size, and most importantly, how much they cost you, because everything that the state does involves resources that must come from somewhere, and that somewhere, as we know, is taxes, right? So here at the Free Market Foundation, of course, we are, as libertarians, as liberals, we are proponents of a very small state, and the reason for this is because we understand that the state gets its resources for everything from us, from you, the taxpayer, and as such, the smaller the state is, the less it spends, the less it will have a need to tax you, right? We believe and know this to be the just way of running society, but our current order is something that is quite contrary to that. That is why we have the budgetary problems that we do, right? As you all know, in South Africa, we have quite a range of social protections and social services that are offered by the state at the behest of the taxpayer, from, healthcare to education and a range of other social welfare, actual, cash payments, right? So these are things that have to be sustained by a state over and above what the state is traditionally concerned or supposed to be doing, right? That is having a police force, having an army, having courts that are able to administer justice whenever conflicts arise between citizens, and all of that. And the state has to do that, find the money for that, and find the money for the other things that we know that the state does. And we say that eventually, to quote, Margaret Thatcher, the people's money will run out, and I think that is what we are experiencing in South Africa, and this is poignant, especially in making the point about the importance of the size of government. As I said here at the Free Market Foundation, we've even written a paper about this, our Liberty First series, whereby we mentioned how important it is to have a limited government, the implications it would have for our fiscal health, and we even recommended solutions, right, like, slashing the public sector wage bill and just putting a hard cap on the amount of deputy ministers that we have, and unfortunately none of that has been listened to. The public sector wage bill still remains the biggest rising expenditure item other than debt servicing costs in our budget, and then we have, I think, more deputy ministers than we've ever had in the history, at least of post-94 South Africa, right? So unfortunately, the state is not listening to us, but in our Liberty First series, specifically our paper about the size of government, we do offer solutions about how we can necessarily get to this ideal that I'm talking about reducing the size of our government, reducing the activities that it does, right? Pretty much reducing how much it costs us as a taxpayer to keep it running. And I think this is important, as I mentioned. Our current finance minister is pretty much citing all of these activities that the state is supposed to be doing as the reason why they are increasing taxes. And I would ask you, right, because taxes come from you, and the state is saying they want to tax you to give you things that you want. Yet, as we know, in South Africa, if you are part of the working class and your income largely goes towards the state, right, and this is the higher you earn because we have progressive income, you are pretty much doubly taxed, right? You are giving money to the state for services that you do not enjoy, and the state that it is saying that it is doing that for your benefit. It is taxing you more so that you don't get to use public schools, because you probably are using private institutions as you should, because they are just objectively better given the inherent inefficiencies of the state. You don't use public health care, as you probably shouldn't do, for the reasons that I have mentioned, right? Yet, as a working class person, you pay for those services through your taxes, and this is something that is quite the injustice, and the state still persists in wanting to raise more and more of the tax burden on you. And I find that, I think you should find that to be pretty unjust too. And the only permanent solution, right, other than raising taxes or cutting taxes, it will be to reduce the size and the scope of our state. Let us reduce the things that our state is doing. Let us have some pretty honest conversations about what the state ought to do and what the state shouldn't do. And if we are having problems already with sustaining, the state or its ability to provide these range of services, then we already have a problem. And I think that the permanent solution to that problem, since no one wants higher taxes, as we are seeing with the proposed 0.5% increase to VAT, is that we need to find a permanent way to ensure that South Africans can lead prosperous lives without having a large part of their, property in the form of income taken by taxes, be it through value-added taxes or through income tax or any other form of tax, right? And for us to be able to do that, we have to heavily reduce the scope of the state. We have to cut away services that the state should not be doing, right? And as part of the recommendations of Liberty First, this includes shaving the public sector wage bill. We need to definitely deal with that, right? Deal with the public sector wage bill, which may involve some uncomfortable conversations with unions. We need to put a cap on the amount of executive positions at the higher end that are available to politicians, because this is where we spend a large part of our money, from flights for these executives to the whole range of benefits that are available to people who are in the employ of the state, right? And we also need to put a general cap on just the general amount of ministries that we have. Do we really need a ministry like for sports and culture and all of that, right? Do we really need all of these ministries that we currently have? Maybe some can be combined in an attempt to consolidate, duties and streamline whatever it is that they are doing, all of course with the outcome of saving costs. And these are recommendations that we have, in our Liberty First paper, whose link should be in the description if you are interested in checking it out. But yeah, please do tell us what you think. As you could tell, I am a proponent of just let us slash the government. Particularly in South Africa, we have a problem of high public sector wage bill, right? We don't have a lot of people, well, relatively to other places, we do have a lot of people employed in the state, but we actually have the people who are employed are paid so much that we aren't seeing a general good return on that. I think that is something that we have to deal with, and when we deal with that, it will cut to the core, I think, of the issues with our labor market, because it will necessitate an uncomfortable conversation with unions and bargaining councils, and really reshaping how we approach labor negotiations in general in South Africa, because then it will be necessitated by the state, right? By the state's inability to sustain itself. And I think we are moving towards that direction, and I would rather that we be proactive about it instead of finding ourselves in a crisis when public sector unions want increases that are just generally unfeasible, and that will lead us towards the path that we're currently on, right? Whereby poor people will have to pay higher prices just to sustain things like public sector increases and other, what I would say isn't the most critical of state functions. So yeah, do tell us what you think. I have a lot of thoughts, as you quite heard. Maybe you disagree with us. You just want the state to be as big as possible. Tell us where we will get the money, of course, if you can. But yeah, man, whatever thoughts that you may have, please share them with us below. Give the video a like, subscribe if you unsubscribe. Go to the Liberty First site and check out a variety of our other papers. And yeah, always remember, stay free.